Stranger people than us are watching.
Your voice is really muffled, Patrick.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
There it is. You're getting, hear the testing, but it's muffled. It's like you're talking out of a box of Kleenex.
Talking out of the hat.
Hey, Jim. Hi, Doreen.
Hey, Clarence.
Hey, Jim. Good morning, Jim.
Morning, everybody. Mark.
Hey, Glenn. Good morning.
Morning. Morning, Jim. David.
Good morning. Hey, Glenn.
Morning. Morning.
Well, welcome, everyone. Feeling good?
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
Feeling good.
Okay, if you would, do us the honors of the candle. If you have a candle nearby, you're certainly welcome to light your own.
We light this candle in recognition of and appreciation for the Christ light within each of us and the presence of the divine in our gathering.
Thank you. Let's see. Let's go over here for a moment to our announcements. I noticed that last week we didn't even get to the announcements, so we'll do that right now. And today, after our service, we're going to have a discussion about our gathering in person at the center. You may have seen an article come out in the Wednesday newsletter, or I guess it was, Monday. Anyway, one of the newsletters this week, there was an article related to that, and in the newsletter this morning. So we'll be discussing that. We'll have a real estate team meeting at 6 o'clock tomorrow. 7 o'clock, we'll have a discussion related to today's talk or whatever discussion topic comes up. Wednesday evening, we have a prayer and meditation circle at 7 o'clock. And Friday, we have a TGIF, Life and Times. And if you are so inclined to make a donation, there is a link to our donation page in the chat box. So with that then, Doug, if you would, accompany us for Love is Flowing Like a River. And if you mute your microphones, we'll be good. Love is flowing like a river, flowing out to you and me, flowing out into the desert, setting all the captives free. Peace is flowing. And who would like to read our affirmation for Living Water Unity together, please? Living Water Unity is a thriving spiritual community inspired to embrace and share our abundant good now. I am empowered for joyful living by expressing God in each moment. And our daily word this morning, who would like to read that? Come on, step up.
I'll go ahead.
All right.
I'll go.
Today's word is joy. Joy is my constant companion. Excuse me. I discover reasons to feel joyful every day, even in the most challenging circumstances. I begin by centering my awareness on Christ, the divine presence within. I feel love and peace lift my heart, and possibilities for good fill my thoughts. I am joyous. I may experience joy as exuberance, delight, and wonder. Joy may also come quietly as the peaceful assurance of God's presence wherever I am. Whatever I am doing, my awareness of joy brings a glow to even the most ordinary day. As I engage wholeheartedly in all that is mine to do, I share my joy with everyone. Through kind words, a sunny smile, and a warm welcome to everyone I meet, I radiate joy and bless the world with my positivity, happiness, and bliss. Scripture today is from Psalm 118, verse 24. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it.
Thank you. And as we acknowledge this opportunity for us to experience joy, to exude joy, realizing at the same time that God is present. God as source of joy is present here and now. Thank you, Father, Mother, God. Thank you. We know that God is a love that has no end and a power that knows no bounds. God's healing power of divine life is restoring, healing, and revitalizing our world in this very moment. We let go of any fears or anxieties, and we affirm that all are safe, healthy, and protected. We bless all those who support us in maintaining vibrant, radiant health. We express divine life in all we think, say, and do. We bless our global family with radiant health, peace of mind, and abundant love. And we have the opportunity to share our prayer requests now. Remember, as we share our prayer requests one at a time, we will offer a time of consideration of those prayers. And in that time of offering consideration of the prayers, let our experience of abundant love flow through us from the heart of God, flow through us into this moment, and bless each and every one in our presence, each and every one in our community, each and every one that walks the face of this planet. So this unconditional love that flows through us into this moment is a means of transforming the consciousness of those for whom we pray, as well as for us as the prayers. So I invite you to bring to mind someone in your experience, or bring to mind your offered prayers, and share those with us one at a time. Patrick, I was unable to hear you. Perhaps others were, but could you speak up a bit?
Yeah, just saying for my father, Keith Sanders, has this old age issue with him.
And so it is.
This is Rachel. I want to just offer a prayer of thanksgiving for our friend Mary, who is recovering from her serious illness and also has a new job at a new veterinarian clinic. And she wanted to thank all of you because she is positive that prayer has made her well and given her new chances.
And so it is.
As always, I would like to ask for safety and blessings for all of our frontline workers, and most especially for Rose Palika and Janine Stanley.
And so it is. And for all of those with whom we have prayed, and for all of those that have come to mind that we would offer our private prayers, we hold them in consciousness. We see them lifted. We see them transformed by the awareness of God's love in their experience. And so it is that together we say, Amen.
Amen.
Well, we have the opportunity this morning to have Patty Jackson with us, and Patty's going to be sharing some of her talent. Patty, you are on.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Great to see everybody. I've missed you all. So here's a song that I wrote at the beginning of the pandemic with my friend Ann Byrne. It's called Go Out Singing. Don't know when I'm gonna go out, but I know I'll go out singing. Maybe in a whisper or a shout, but I know I'll go out singing. The world is upside down, and we don't know when it's gonna be right. Gotta keep my feet on the ground, but my worries try to take flight. But I still hear those voices are ringing across the ocean, the trees, and the sky. From the balconies of Italy, listen to New York's reply. But I don't know when I'm gonna go out, but I know I'll go out singing. Maybe in a whisper or a shout, but I know I'll go out singing. There's gratitude in living through another glorious day. The music of the children's laughter as they run and dance and play. With a lot of dark times before us, we can't see the end of it now. Looking to find some answers and cast aside our doubts. We don't know when we're gonna go out, but we know we'll go out singing. Maybe in a whisper or a shout, but we know we'll go out singing. Only through the fire, iron turns into steel. Soulmate like no other, our strength he reveals. In this moment's life, shoot, I'm gonna do the whole verse again, I gotta stop. gently through the fire. Iron turns into steel in a moment like no other. Strength will be revealed, not just you or me, there is all of us. We are forever changed, from one voice into many, transformed by the flames. We don't know when we're gonna go out, but we know we'll go out singing, maybe in a whisper or shout, but we know we'll go out singing. Don't know when I'm gonna go out, but I know I'll go out singing. It may be in a whisper or a shout, but I know I'll go out singing.
Thank you,
Beautiful.
Patty. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The microphone off stage. Well, brilliant.
So, that bird has my wings. That title came from it was mentioned in Tara Brach's book Radical Compassion, but it came from a prisoner. His name is Jarvis J. Masters. He was imprisoned in San Quentin for a armed robbery conviction that 30 plus years ago. He subsequently was implicated and convicted of murdering a prison guard. He has appealed that conviction. That is in process. He's been on death row for a couple of decades, and he has become a student of Buddhism and an accomplished meditation teacher. In fact, he has a meditation ministry in San Quentin. But a number of years ago, he was out in the prison yard, and a seagull flew into the yard and landed in a puddle of water. One of the young burly inmates picked up a stone and was going to throw it at him, and Jarvis held up his hand and he said, "No, that bird has my wings." And normally you don't pay attention to what's going on in the VR. I mean, you protect yourself. You don't get involved in other people's business. So there was a great expectation that a fight was going to ensue, but the person who had picked up the stone and was ready to throw it looked very puzzled, and the energy dissipated, and he put down the stone. For days after that, prisoners would come up to him and ask him what that meant. That bird has my wings. And so, what do you what does that phrase mean to you? How do you interpret that?
Part of all life, so therefore it's part of me.
And that was the way he intended it. That I am part of that, and that is part of me. And that bird represents my freedom. That bird is part of this experience, this global experience that I am having. And that idea that bird has my wings is perhaps a solution to all of the stuff that's going on right now. The demonstrations, repeatedly, the demonstrations are gaining strength. It turns out that the response to those demonstrations has morphed, even in Washington, D.C., which had the confrontation between the demonstrators and the and the police a couple of days ago. Even there, we apparently are now seeing that the police are in groups of 2 or 3. They're not in the flanks of shielded, helmeted, armed individuals, but rather they are in groups of 2 or 3, and their purpose has apparently been changed, not to put down the demonstrations, but rather just to ensure that peace is part of that process. So it's interesting that these demonstrations seem to have a level of engagement that has not been seen since the civil rights era of the late 50s, 60s, and 70s. So in our, as we are seeing this unfold, we are seeing that there is perhaps a growing empathy. But empathy in and of itself indicates a separation. And as Unity students, as students of A Course in Miracles, as students of New Thought and the greater New Thought movement, as well as students of Buddhism and other traditions, that we are seeing that there is a growing acceptance that we are interdependent. We are part and parcel of both the whole, and the whole is part of us. About 70,000 years ago, anthropologists tell us that something changed in the human structure, in the way humans related with each other. And there's speculation that change occurred as language developed. And as language developed, there was a greater degree of communication. It's not as if the pre-70,000 year ago humanoids did not communicate with each other, but the development of the prefrontal cortex in the brain allowed a greater degree of sophistication of that communication. And while the tribes had their own language, if you will, or they were focused primarily on communicating with each other, over time we have, to a greater and greater extent, widened that circle of communication, widened that circle of empathy, to be now a global, interconnected, interdependent. We still have societies, we still have cultures, but we are seeing that we are all connected. COVID and the arising of the pandemic is exemplary of that interdependence. That the virus does not know national boundaries, it does not know ethnic origins, and it pays no attention to race. Now, it is true that there are some that are affected, some races that are affected more than more than others, but those have to do with socioeconomic and pre-existing conditions that are in the that are experienced by those who are adversely affected. So, as we have grown into this global interdependent population, we still have our biases. And those biases are both explicit. You know, I don't like you because the color of your hair, or I don't like you because of that that thing that you said. Excuse me. But there are also implicit biases. And I'd like to share with you some of those implicit biases. If I can get back to my Zoom screen here and do a screen share. There we go. Tara said that as the cognitive revolution spurred the growth of communication among human societies, it created a crucial evolutionary trajectory. are unfolding toward an interdependent global community. And yet in the most primitive parts of our brain, the unreal other persists. And we talked about the unreal others last week. The unreal others, now working against our survival and ensnaring us in a regressive and toxic trance. It fuels institutionalized racism, classism, and the oppression of refugees and other marginalized humans, unimaginable cruelty to non-human animals, war, and a mindless destruction of our Earth ecosystems. And this evolution has highlighted that we are still indeed holding these biases. And these biases, the implicit biases, arise from our consideration of those of different race, different ethnic group or nationality. Boy, my tongue is not working this morning. Different religion, different sexual orientation, different gender identity, different ability or disability, different social class, different political views. Well, this study has highlighted for me implicit biases that I hold, and it's been quite an eye-opener for me. There is a story that shared by Desmond Tutu. You know Desmond Tutu, who was instrumental, perhaps along with Nelson Mandela, was one of the driving forces, one of the two driving forces in the dissolution of apartheid in South Africa. And he said that one time I went to Nigeria when I was working for the World Council of Churches, and I was due to fly to Jos. And so I go to Lagos Airport, and I get onto the plane, and the two pilots in the cockpit are both black. And I just grew inches. You know, it was fantastic because we had been told that blacks can't do this. And we have a smooth takeoff, and then we hit the mother and father of turbulence. I mean, it was quite awful, scary. Do you know, I can't believe it, but the first thought that came to my mind was, hey, there's no white men in that cockpit. Are these blacks going to be able to make it? And of course, they obviously made it. Here I am. But the thing is, I had not known that I was damaged to the extent of thinking that somehow, actually, what those white people who had been kept drumming into us in South Africa about our being inferior, about our being incapable, it had lodged somewhere in me. Wow, isn't that interesting? Here was a man who was instrumental in the movement of South Africa into a more open society, and he's right there admitting that I have biases as well. What about all of us? What are our implicit biases? You know, we have social media. It's part of our evolutionary trajectory, for good or evil. It is part of our evolutionary trajectory. And how many of you are familiar with the function in Facebook called blocking? Right? You have someone, me. You have someone that comes onto your news feed, responds to a post that you make, and you may or may not choose to engage with them. But in that engagement, you discover that, you know, I'm willing to welcome anyone into my house, but there are some people that I won't invite back. Well, Facebook has quite a convenient tool in not inviting people back, and that is to block. You identify you click on the user, and you go to the upper right. There are three dots. You click on that, and you come down to this entry block, and then it asks you to confirm that you're going to block this person, and yes, boom, they're no longer available to come into your house. Of late, I have, in my engagement with individuals, where I have come to the conclusion that the conversations that they have to offer, the perspectives that they have to offer, no longer feed me. And so I have been making liberal use, if you will. That's the other use of that word, the other definition of that word. But I've been making liberal use of that function of blocking. And so as I was reading through this work by Tara Brach, I realized, oh my God, I am not just acknowledging my implicit bias, but I am reinforcing my implicit bias for those that have views that are contrary to mine. And while, I think of myself as a compassionate, loving individual, I realize that in so doing, I'm not really inviting them into my house. I'm allowing them to see what I have to think or say, and I can choose to respond to them or not, but I don't need to block them because, in fact, they may have, at some point in the future, they may have some perspective that is going to inform me, educate me, contribute to my understanding, if not of reality, at least of a worldview that they hold. So this opportunity that we have in social media to acknowledge the implicit biases that we have is actually a very powerful tool. It's holding a mirror up before us to indicate to us that, hey, there's something here that needs to be worked on. There's something here that needs to be addressed. So in the awareness that these implicit biases exist, it allows me to understand to a greater degree than I had that these views, while they may be contrary, are nonetheless informative. And whether or not I choose to attach and engage to those contrary views is really up to me. But at the same time, when I block those views from being presented to me, I'm really blocking my opportunity to expand my awareness and to grow. So over the course of time, I have, to one extent or another, I have advanced my self-awareness. And sometimes it's in fits and starts. In other times it's explosive. In my recognition of my, for me, inappropriate use of the blocking function, I have perhaps grown a bit. Hopefully, I've grown a bit. So, how do we overcome these implicit biases? How do we overcome our resistance to those of a different age or those of a different persuasion, political persuasion, or those of a different ethnicity or those of a different race? We look at what is happening with respect to the protests, the demonstrations, even the looting, and we see that we have an affinity or not for those participants. We may say, well, there are better ways to make your case than to break a store window and take things out of the store. There are better ways to make a case than to charge a line of police, to provoke the police. There are better ways to address these issues. And some would hold that the demonstrations in and of themselves, even if they're peaceful demonstrations, they are disrespecting the flag or some other perspective that I don't hold that opinion, but nonetheless, we all have our own set of biases. And the question is, how do we open up ourselves? How do we broaden our awareness, not just of our own experience, but of other people's experience? one of the things that has really come to mind for me, one of the experiences or one of the suggestions that has come to mind for me, is to put myself in their shoes, to allow myself to understand to the extent that I can. And it's primarily in my imaginings that I am gaining a greater understanding of a person's perspective. One of the things that researchers have found is that mindfulness practices, the essence of a mindfulness practice is just to be aware of your current experience without judging, to just be aware of what your opinions are, be aware of what your experience is without placing judgment. And those mindfulness practices are rooted in a meditation practice where there is a focus on breathing. You feel your breath coming in and you feel your breath going out. So as we look at the turmoil that is heaving our country, heaving our society, and it's not just located here, but it's happening literally all over the world. As we look at the turbulence that is occurring, we can see that turbulence is based on and exacerbated by our implicit biases. If we're going to bring peace, and order has baggage associated with it, but if we're going to bring peace and order to our society, that it begins where? It begins with each of us. And we need to take that responsibility. We need to acknowledge that, and we need to provide for that. We need to accommodate that awareness. And one of the ways that we can do that is through this practice of rain. Rain is, as you may recall, rain is the practice of recognizing, allowing, investigating, and nurturing. To recognize the bias, as I have recognized my implicit bias. Some of I will not claim that I have recognized all of my biases. I think it's like the peeling of an onion. There's layers and layers and layers and layers. Each layer exposing another layer that needs to be addressed. But recognizing the bias, allowing that bias to occur without judgment, to investigate what that bias is doing within me. Where is the tension that arises within me? What is the effect of that bias on my consciousness? What is the effect of that bias on my relationships? Not just the relationships that are what I would consider to be good, solid relationships, but also the relationships that are fraught, that are turbulent, the relationships that perhaps I have blocked in my experience. And then to nurture, to bring to my awareness that, it's okay that you have this bias, and what can we do to relieve that bias? What can we do to transform that bias into one of understanding and one of acceptance? And that process of mindfulness training is really where we're headed. And so with this awareness, let us come into a sacred space, into that space where we are willing to rest, allowing ourselves to relax, let go of the tension that is in our bodies. One of the useful ways of identifying and releasing that tension is what's called a body scan, to notice the tension in our toes, to relax those muscles, to recognize that those muscles are attached to muscles in our instep, the muscles that are around our metatarsals, relaxing those, and into the muscles in our ankle, allowing that connection to the muscles in our calves to relax. Our knees and our thighs relaxing. The muscles in our thighs connecting to our buttocks and into our torso, into our lower back, into our abdomen. Arising into the mid-chest, mid-back, into our shoulders, into our neck, muscles up into our jaws, our cheeks, muscles in our forehead, those muscles that cause us to frown or cause us to wrinkle our foreheads, muscles in our scalps, connecting through our shoulders into the muscles of our triceps and biceps, into our elbow and around our elbow, into our forearm, into our hands, past our wrist, through our palms, into our fingers, allowing our body to relax. We pay attention to the thoughts that we hold right now, not judging them, not trying to get rid of them, but just to acknowledge. And we let those thoughts go. And then we attend to the thoughts that come in to replace those. Breathing in and breathing out. Paying attention. What is going on in your experience right now? What is your reaction to the audio that is happening right now? Allowing yourself to release those judgments. Allow yourself to bring to mind some aspect of your experience that is disrupting your peace. Where is that? Where is that based? What is the source of that disruption? Is that disruption arising as a result of some bias that you have? Some bias against a particular person or a characteristic of that person? An aspect of the color of their skin, or an aspect of their age, of their political persuasion, of their ethnic origin, of the way they use language, of whatever characteristic. Acknowledge that and allow that. And investigate that. What does that thought, what does that perspective, what does that bias do to your peace of mind? How is that judgment affecting your awareness of your connectedness with all that is all, with all of creation and with all that is the source of creation, that underlying vibration that is God. And then allow yourself to, while acknowledging those disruptions, to nurture yourself, to allow yourself the love that is always available to you, the nurturing that is always available to you, if you let it. The lovingness that is God embrace you, permeate you, transform you. You are the vehicle of love in this moment. It is through you that love can nurture the world, allowing this unconditional little love to flow from the heart of God through you into this moment, transforming those held beliefs, those biases, those judgments of others, transforming, lifting, expanding your awareness, expanding your worldview, expanding your connectedness, your awareness of your connectedness to every creature on the planet, to every outcome of creation. Allow yourself to extend your connectedness to the demonstrators that are peacefully chanting, to the looters that are breaking windows and stealing, to those who are picking fights. See your connectedness to both of those that are fighting. See your connectedness to the police, to the provocateurs, to the innocent bystanders, to the officials. Allow yourself without judgment to view each and every one, and from time to time to focus on a given individual. What are the wounds? What are the life experiences? What are the beliefs and worldviews that fuel their behavior? Allow yourself to question, what is it like to be that person? Why would I be willing to steal from a store with a broken window, a wide open door? Why would I be willing to wield a baton against an unarmed individual in front of me? Why would I be willing to spit at a policeman who is following orders? Why would I be willing to scream at the person that is giving those orders? And what would it be like to be in their position, to be responsible for control? whether it was warranted or not. What would it be like to be you? Resting with those questions. Allow yourself to release your grip on the beliefs, the perspectives, the worldview that we each hold. Let those go for just a moment. Blur the boundaries between us and them. Then let those boundaries disappear. Breathing in and breathing out. Allowing ourselves to revisit this practice whenever we are aware of those biases that we are holding. Breathing in and breathing out. Paying attention to our experience in this moment. The feelings that we hold, the tensions that we have, the thoughts, and our behaviors. Is this who I want to be? Is this how I want to be remembered? Is this what I want to teach my children, my grandchildren? Do I want to be remembered by my great-grandchildren according to the strong biases that I've held, or the love that I have shown to each and every person in my experience? What is our legacy for this moment? Breathing in and breathing out. We come back to this time, to this place, feeling our body connecting, feeling the chair beneath our thighs, feeling the tension in our body and allowing that tension once again to relax. And I'd like to share with you this final quote from Tara Brach in Radical Compassion. Whenever we pay close attention to another life, whether it's a person, our dog, a favorite plant, or a bird, this being begins to feel like part of us. It matters to us. We share the same wings, the same longing to live fully and freely. Yet we're also familiar with trance, with preoccupation, judgment, or feeling threatened. Makes it easy to distance ourselves, especially from those we don't know and who are different from us. But that trance, that preoccupation, that judgment of those that are different from us blocks us from the realization that we are part and parcel of this creation. And as we come back together, let's come back with this offering blessing. Together, please. Divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give in love because I trust in God. And again, if you're so inclined to make a contribution now, you can go to the chat box, click on that first link, and it'll take you to our donation page. Oh, boy. Oh, we still have our closing benediction. We do. Let me unmute our good friend and compatriot. Doug, if you could unmute yourself, that would be great. Let's see. Let's go back here. I'll go here and unmute Doug. Okay, Doug, if you would please.
I think that's what happened on the meditation too. I had myself unmuted and was re-muted. I was playing through that whole thing.
Yeah, what was happening on the meditation we'll talk about later, but if you would accompany us on Let There Be Peace.
But you can hear me now?
Yeah, now. God as our Father, family all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment now. With every step I take, let this be my joyous vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. And together, please. The light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. And I noticed that I was muted there on that last as well. Oh, well. So, how are y'all doing?
Good.
Any thoughts, reactions to all of that?
Well, I tell you what, David, you must have been sleeping in my bedroom last night.
Oh, God forbid.
Yes, that is probably the closest we've come to whatever it is
imagining
ahead of
what
time,
you're going to
but
talk about.
We were just having a discussion about that same thing this morning, and also word for word what you were talking about. It's amazing how our preconceptions judge us, run us down the road out there.
Well, one thing I'll have to offer, Dick, is if you would quit snoring, it would be a lot more pleasant.
In our house.
I'll try.
This is Sandy. We were on that same topic. We were looking outside the door, or I was, because I was facing the bird feeder. And I was saying to Dick how I was thinking yesterday of taking the bird feeder down, because the birds they have their own order, and the little ones get pounced on by the big blackbirds, and then they leave, and then they come back, and so on. And I thought how every level of life has its, to use the word, pecking order, and how we do that as a society. We are like, if things aren't the way we see them, we think, oh, that's different from us and we're separate. And we were having a very good talk this morning. We haven't had a lot of those lately, and it was kind of neat. And then you led right into it. It was funny because you were talking about the birds with wings and so on. So that's all.
It turns out that Jarvis Masters wrote a book called That Bird Has My Wings. And I didn't realize that until I did some more research on Jarvis Masters. But so I have to thank Jarvis Masters for the title of my talk this morning. Any other thoughts?
I think what we can all do to help is try to at least attempt to keep in mind that all life is with us, and we should treat them like they are inherently great spirit at heart, and that will go a long way towards making things better all around.
That's kind of hard to do when I pick up my piece of bacon in the morning and savor its aroma and its flavor.
Oh,
that was intended to be a joke. Okay.
It really becomes part of you then. So
yeah, that's right.
That's true.
For a period of time.
For a period of time.
I just have the thought.
You didn't kill that pig.
No, but that pig wouldn't have had to be killed if I didn't enjoy my bacon so much.
So I did have a thought on the concept of blocking someone, because I raised my hand when you asked if people were familiar with that, and I have only blocked one person. And I had made what I thought was a fairly innocuous post, obviously somewhat controversial, about it being courteous to wear a mask. And this guy came back at me, guns blazing, figuratively, with almost a threat of literal, for people who wanted to wear masks. So I just said, okay, and I just ignored it. I'll just let it go. He had to say. I won't say anything. I won't come back again. And then anytime, it was as if he was sitting by his computer waiting. Anytime someone else on my list made a comment on that post, he was back at them every single time within 5 minutes. And because he was attacking my other guests in my house, I did go ahead and block him because it seemed kind of fruitless. There was no discussion. It was just hate and more hate. So that's the one person I blocked.
I would hope that I could as well justify my own blockings, but I can't. Any other thoughts?
I have to say that I feel comfortable blocking people as Kay did, whose message is hate and fear and prejudice. That doesn't mean that I don't care about that person and that I understand they came to those beliefs and actions in a way that I don't know about. And I can still love them as a human being. I have a dear friend and a family member that I have blocked, and they're beautiful people. They're wonderful people, but I don't allow them on my Facebook page because their posts are vitriolic, ugly, and I feel like anyone who is espousing violence against other human beings, who is trampling on the rights of others with what they say and what they do, I do not need them in my life. It doesn't mean I don't care about them. It doesn't mean I can't embrace their humanity and love them and understand that they came to that, God knows how, but I feel an implicit right to keep those people out of my space.
And my comments, let me clarify. My comments were not to say that you don't have that right. You absolutely do. I'm just noticing for my own experience, based upon my activity, my behavior, my reactions to those individuals. I find that for me, that my activity of blocking is literally blocking a part of my own consciousness, and I am not imploring you to avoid blocking. All I'm saying is that for me, that experience is one that pointed up for me my implicit biases, and particularly my implicit biases for those that hold a different political view than I. So
I had that happen just this past week with a very, very close friend. And there was a lot of negative stuff coming in on Facebook, and I messaged her instead. I sent her a long text about what I felt and said that I really don't want to hear that kind of stuff or read that kind of stuff. And she said it was her daughter's posts that she would repost. And so she said, if you want, you can unfriend me. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I just want you to respect the fact that I don't want to read that stuff. So, please understand where I'm coming from. And we have mentioned that to a couple of other people. Because we know a lot of people in the South and through other acquaintances, we've traveled so much, that are very, very conservative in their views. We have had to say, please do not discuss anything political. Do not send anything on Facebook that's political, because we won't read it. And you have to express what you feel. You don't necessarily have to block them as a friend. If they don't respect that, yes, then you do. So that's how it works for me. And Dick doesn't read Facebook at all unless it's something that I tell him about. So that gives him the out.
I think that this guy and others like him have been manipulated by those who want to control everything, and
it doesn't seem like
they're continually buying into the statements by those who want to control everything that direct us to think of others as bad because of this, that, and the other, and have us combating with each other. It's all about separation for them, controllers.
okay. Anything else? Well, shall we move on to our discussion of social distancing in our building?
Yes.
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 Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and continue. I need to do a little bit of investigation here to find.
Pretty.
How many people have we got online right now? 16. We're losing people, so
21.
21. Okay, good.
Oh.
Please stay if you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an important discussion, and it would be useful to have as many perspectives as possible on this.
Well, Bob and I would not come into the building. Maybe in a month or so if it's still there, but depending on how things go. I did like the idea, having talked with Rose Polika for quite a while, of possibly meeting out in the parking lot where we can socially distance. We could bring our own folding chairs. We could bring an umbrella and our own drinks. I don't know if that could possibly be even still offered on Zoom for those who don't want to even risk that. But, we are listening to the experts who say, those people who are over 60 and who have underlying health conditions, are much safer staying at home. And we aren't going to grocery stores or restaurants, or we haven't, all this time, we still will not. But we would consider doing that, meeting out in the parking lot where we can be very socially distanced, bring in our own chairs, umbrella if you want, your own drink or snack or whatever. So that's kind of what Bob and I have talked about.
Okay.
The outside idea of having a parking lot situation is fine, but you got to realize too that where are we going to park our cars? Going along with the same idea that you're talking about, there are a couple of people within the congregation who are finding mobility a little bit difficult. And trying to walk down the hill and walk back up the hill to cars to go home, come and go is going to be a little bit difficult.
And I just don't. To me, I don't want to be inside the church right now. I think for what you were expressing, I read your whole description, David, all the way down today, and looked at the plan that you had written out or drew out. And I think that's a lot of effort for little benefit, because we still won't be able to communicate in the church. And the idea of having to make a reservation to come to church is totally not acceptable to me. So, I consider other alternatives, and, you can do Zoom and maybe do a parking lot once a month or once every other week, or try different things. Zoom is good, but Zoom is good. It does lack a little with being able to sing along with it because it's never in pace with us. But other than that, it's good. So that's my opinion.
If we meet outside, we could also designate some spots real close to the parking lot. Right on the street, out in the neighborhood, where you don't have to walk up the hill. We could put some cones out for those people who have difficulty with walking up the hill. So, that's just a possibility that I was thinking of. The other thing that Bob mentioned when he and I were talking about meeting inside the church, we're trying to sell the church. How would that configuration look to prospective buyers, or would we need to reshuffle it every time we had a service? That's just another consideration.
Good point.
Yeah.
I was thinking we could reverse the handicap parking spaces and make those the ones at the side at the bottom of the hill instead of the top. In order to put up cones in the neighborhood, we need approval from the neighbors, because that is public street. And if they approved, that would be fine. That was all.
Well,
I think there's at least one wheelchair around in the church. Somebody could if they had to come down from the street down to the parking lot and back, somebody could run them up and down in the wheelchair and help that way.
So we could have about 12 parking spaces if we just had all the parking spaces enter from Vance. We have 6 parking spaces along the Vance Street right now, and we could add about 6 more down to the trash enclosure. And the west side of Vance, north of our building, that rarely has any cars on it, but that is parking space. So in terms of parking, I'm not that concerned about it. I think we would have adequate parking. The concern that I have is actually in terms of setup and tear down. If we have a parking lot gathering, we will not be able to have Zoom. And I say that with consideration of all of the issues of electronics and it just I don't see that working. However, I'm willing to hear people say, well, here's how you do it. But in my consideration of that privately, without any other consultation, it doesn't appear to me to be feasible to run a Zoom session while we're doing the parking lot session.
Sure.
And the concern that I have then is splitting the congregation, having the some of the congregation not be able to attend because they don't want to come to the parking lot gathering, and then others who are able to make it or want to weather the heat, whether they have umbrellas or not. All of that indicates to me the challenge, the logistical challenge of setting up a parking lot gathering. And if you all want to come together and figure out how these issues can be resolved, I'm certainly open to hear about them.
It just occurred to me, we keep talking about a parking lot service. What about a parking lot picnic? We still do the Zoom service, but we choose a time where we can all come together with our chairs and our lunches and our beverages and get together in the parking lot just to be together as opposed to conducting a service. That just occurred to me. I don't know.
I am very much for a gathering in the park, socially distanced, and where we bring our own food. I think that potlucks at this point in time are probably not in our best interest, but that we bring our own food, picnic basket, our lawn chairs, we set up appropriate social distancing, and we talk loud.
Can you hear me now? David?
I'm sorry?
Can you hear me now?
No, not much.
I have a different headset on. I'm trying to make that work. Can you hear me if I talk a little closer?
Yep.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, what I was going to say is why not have an in-church service for those that want to brave it and post that on Zoom for the people that don't want to brave it. And do it simultaneously. So people can sit 6 feet apart or 8 feet apart inside the sanctuary, and then broadcast that to the people, especially over 60, that don't want to risk it. Is that a possibility?
It's a possibility with a different speaker.
Yeah.
I mean, you're over 60?
I'm not willing to go into the sanctuary. I'm not willing to gather in the sanctuary.
Well, then that kind of makes it a difference, doesn't it?
Well, we could hire some speakers for those Sundays that we want to get together in the sanctuary.
The fact is that it would be very difficult to sanitize that sanctuary.
That's true. I just
Very difficult.
You don't have the gal we used to have or the people we used to have.
We don't have the people we used to have. How would we sanitize it? For each time that we met, you'd have to sanitize everything. Yeah, a lot of difficulties, I'm afraid. What about having 2 services? Maybe on a Saturday and a Sunday, or 2 on Sunday. 1 in the parking lot and 1 on Zoom. 2 separate times. So that those who don't want to come to the parking lot don't have to, but can still meet with their, and then some of us can do 2 services. We can do Zoom and the parking lot. Just a thought.
I don't know that we would have enough membership to do that, to be honest about it. Is it worth the effort to do that? I could see us having a picnic once a month instead of a service and just saying, hey, we're going to get together on this time. I know we're going to be out of town quite a bit this summer, and there may be other people too, so our numbers may be a little less. But to go into the church, especially if David has those strong feelings about that, which I can understand, and it's neat that you took the time to work this all out as a possibility. But I think if we're making a vote here, it's to decide, are we in the church, or are we going to stay on Zoom, or are we going to meet somewhere else? And is that even a possibility? A lot of people are in the parks right now, and that may be difficult.
That's why the parking lot would work well, because it's a flat surface, easy for people to walk and get around. There is parking around there.
We've got some people leaving, by the way. Maybe we should do a vote on do we want to be in the church or out, and at least accomplish that.
I will send out in the morning in tomorrow's newsletter. I'll send out a poll for email response because we've already lost people that are going to have some opinion. So let's do that polling by email so that more people can participate. But that is also I'm imploring you to respond to the email.
Yeah, I didn't see very much response the first time.
Yeah,
but David, if you're not willing to go in the church, that also makes that vote invalid because I don't think we want to go hire speakers to come in, and we enjoy talking with you. So why would we be voting to use the church if that's not going to be a possibility?
I see the validity of your comment. Yes.
And you need to let people know that in the email, that you're not willing to be in the church, but if others want to, they're certainly welcome.
Yeah, my opinion about that has evolved. There was a time when I was considering that question, and how would we do it, and we could get a certain number of band members in. Well, I went through the process of laying out the sanctuary with those various bubbles. I mean, it was at that point in time that I was saying, well, this is a possibility. How would this work? And then I got to thinking about it, and the stories that I've read about even the people who are not hospitalized, they in fact stand a substantial chance of having neurological damage that can create what Linda has been going through for the last 34 years of this chronic fatigue syndrome with inflammation of the nerves, and that just I don't want to see the rest of my life be dealing with what Linda has been dealing with, and I don't want to see the rest of our congregation having to deal with that either. Even if there's only a 5% chance of it, I can attest, being a witness to her experience, it's not a pleasant experience. So I'm just not willing to expose myself to that degree.
I think we should all keep awareness of the possibilities. I've had sanitizer in my car, and I use it before I get out of the car. And so we should continue to pay attention to those things that will stop the spread of the virus. I saw an article in the New Yorker when people in the government and the hospitals in Iceland saw what was happening in China at the very beginning of the outbreak. They prepared as much as they possibly could, and they were virtually unaffected by the virus, Iceland.
And New Zealand as well.
Oh.
New Zealand, the Prime Minister there was pretty proactive, very proactive in curbing the opportunity for COVID to expand in their population. So, okay, I'll send out an email. I'll include this issue of sanctuary not a reasonable possibility, and see what ideas come out of it, as well as feedback that comes out of the polling.
Look, David, this is Jim. So
Hi,
there's
Jim.
always the possibility that you actually might sell the church.
Yeah, that is a part of this. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. This
good discussion to see what we do when the church is gone. So.
That's for me, this was just an interim question. People were saying, let's gather back at the church one more time or a few more times, and so that's where this discussion arose. Yeah. By the way, let's all hold the vision of that quick sale. We have had no showings this week.
Yeah, that's not a good thing. I noticed that. Yeah.
How can you tell if there's been showings or not?
I actually get a notice
Yeah,
from the
okay.
real estate agent
Somebody will
that
pick that tonight then if I
that
hear.
a showing has been scheduled.
Okay, we're on Zoom right now, so I've got to go. Okay, I'm back.
But
Sorry about that.
There's a
Stephanie.
lockbox, right?
Yes, there is a
Sorry.
lockbox. It turns out that lockbox has a different code every day. It's Wi-Fi updated, and
Cool.
so when the showing is scheduled, an email is sent to the real estate agent conducting the showing, and I also get notification. I don't know whether it's a CC of that or it's well, I get a notification. That's all.
Right. Yeah.
So
Because the old method was the lockbox was available to anybody, and they would just leave a business card there if they showed your property. But this is different.
Yeah,
It
it's
is different.
updated a little.
And I think perhaps the lack of showings, having been on the real estate committee, it may also be because of this chaos that we've been going through for the last week and a half. It tends to kind of subdue all other things. And I think once this passes, it will be better. I hope so.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful
Yeah.
week.
thank you all for being here.
Thank you for a good service, David.
Oh,
You guys.
you're
Yes.
You know, all
welcome.
your
You're welcome.
friends.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Pay attention to your biases. See you later. And Dick, please, you can get those spring-loaded things on your nose that keep you from snoring.
I was just going to tell you to stay out of my bedroom. That's all.
I don't want to be there.
Bye, everyone. Have
All
a
right.
wonderful week.
Have a
Yes.
great weekend.
Okay.
Bye, everybody.
See you Monday.
Hey, Dan, I didn't earlier acknowledge you. How are you?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Good. It's great to see you on here.
Yeah,
I'm
got
delighted
here a
you
little
joined.
bit late today. Yeah,
Well-
was it? Cute.
There were several people that were late today, but that's fine. You know, it's actually less disruptive than people walking in the sanctuary. So for that, I'm thankful of Zoom.
Everything gets a little bit loose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Blessings, everyone.
We'll probably see you tomorrow evening. It's tomorrow, right? Okay.
As far as I know.
Cool.
I see
Good night.
it's just changed dramatically.
Yeah, I guess it's that
I know
time.
this.
He looks more like Paul now.
Started growing a beard. Got a haircut.
Is that a number 3, Paul? Is that a number 3 or?
Yeah, it's about it. It grew out to about a 3.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just move it forward a little bit.
Yeah.
Magic marker can, you got dark hair, so magic marker across there. You can establish your own hairline.
No,
I'll ask him about that.
We're all cracking up.
I
Yeah.
remember there was a time that I saw Woody Harrelson being interviewed after one of his movies was released. And in this movie, he had this long, goofy wig. And they actually asked him, now, was that your real hair? And he said, yes, that was my real hair. I make a point of keeping it very short on the sides and totally shaving the entire top. That was one of the most ridiculous questions I ever heard.
They say the larger the forehead, the smarter the person is.
Is that right? All right. Well, I'm glad to know that. Mine is advancing to the rear very quickly. But it turns out I have more hair on my head now than I ever had on my head. It's just that it's populated down on the sides.
Yeah.
If you put your head down like that instead of up, then no one will see the hair in your nose.
Yeah, I have to comb it over from my back.
There you go.
I don't think that's going to work. No.
Well, blessings all.
You'll find the way you are.
I'll leave the room open if you guys want to chat. I'm going to go have some lunch. Blessings.
Oh, there's a thought. We should probably get going too. I mean, you said, yeah.
I'm ready.
I still have things to plant outside that aren't in the ground yet, so.
Oh
I
boy,
should
it'd be a hot day for it.
It is, but yesterday wasn't, but the wind came up so badly.
Mm-hmm.
I got some work done in the morning. It was nice.
Lunch sounds like a good idea too.
Yeah, so we'll see you all soon. Everybody take care.
Take care, everybody. See you soon. Be safe.
Everybody have a wonderful day.
We had a good gathering today. We saw Jim and some other new faces, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we had our video muted and the microphone muted, but we could hear it as we were making breakfast. So we weren't face to face yet, and Pam has to get to Crappie's last training. We had a class that started up with social distancing big time, and so we continued out some training that he had, and Pam wanted to continue that, so she's out with him now, and this is his last training, so he's getting pretty good. He really pays attention. Got all his same little quirks and stuff, but they're getting better. He's getting a little less reactive. So
Yeah, he's one neat dog.
yeah, he's fun.
Professor.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be good. We could try that parking lot thing, but yeah, I don't think we ought to do it for the service necessarily. But if we had like a picnic or just even a get together, or it doesn't even have to be very many people, just whoever wants to get together. We've had classes and things and Course in Miracles and stuff and little breakout groups that doesn't have to split up the church or anything. So yeah, I get David's idea of having just some people on Zoom and some people in person in the parking lot. That would feel like we're really separating ourselves out and aren't getting the full congregant experience on Sunday. So, and we can always do that other days. So, but yeah, that I haven't been to anything yet that's been outdoors that people congregate. But when you go to the park and stuff, you'll see people. But yeah, we have a lot of time. We want to try and take Profi up to this park and do some training with him. And so we usually stay pretty far apart from people. But that's a good thing. So we go up and we take over the tennis courts, and those are all fenced off. And so when we're in there, nobody else comes in unless some tennis players want to come along and play. We just take over the tennis courts and do training with him for a short time and then leave. So, but he's been he really likes that. He bugs us if he doesn't get enough training. So he likes it.
Yeah, you don't want to give him too much training, otherwise he'll take over.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's the thing, is most of the training is us trying to figure out how to tell him what to do. He's standing there looking, well, what do you want me to do? As soon as he figures that out, then he does it. So it's mostly training us, I think.
Yeah, he's going to say, who's in charge here?
Mm-hmm. Sometimes he is.
Oh, boy.
But, yeah. So she'll be back shortly. But
Okay.
I think...
Yeah, it's noon here, too. I'm going to grab a bite to eat, and then I'll get back to taking a look at everybody.
Yeah.
A little bit.
All right. We'll see you. Have a good one.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
I'm going to head out. You going to stick around, Glenn?
I'm not sure.
All right. See if anybody else pops in. Maybe Dan will pop back in. I'm gonna go make something for lunch now. So it's
All right, well,
good seeing you. Yeah, it's good to see you. You think you might want to get out to the parking lot once in a while?
I like the idea of the once a month picnic.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a little bit of time sometimes for people to get out and get their car cleaned up and, think about all the extra logistics to just going out and coming home. We take off our shoes before we come in. We sanitize everything. If we touched a bunch of stuff, we go take off our clothes and take a shower. It's, a lot more steps and things. So we kind of have to think of it in a way. Somebody mentioned something about when you're trying to figure out how contamination can spread. It's like if everything was covered with a red dust, and if you got it on you, it stayed on you until you touched something else, and then you got it on that. And if you just think about, don't have to do that all the time because it'd probably freak you out, but just in the training to try and train what your hands are doing, you just say, now I just touched that thing. Now anything else I touch with this hand has whatever was on that thing on it too. And if you just train your mind to just be cognizant of, okay, now my hands are kind of contaminated, and and don't touch anything if you don't want your hands contaminated for a little bit, or if you do, then you got to go wash your hands. So there's a big process involved. But if you just let your habit do what it does, it's amazing how many times you touch stuff and then touch your face and then touch something else, then something else touches that, and then you touch your face with it. It's like, okay, if you're just thinking about, okay, where did that red dust go? It's everywhere unless you really try. So that's something you almost have to train your muscle memory to not just go and do.
That's another reason I have the sanitizer in my car. That's handy, available to
you just gotta keep sanitizing all the time. If you have it right there, then that really helps.
Yeah. Well, I haven't had breakfast yet. So
you better get something.
And then you have an opportunity to go have lunch.
Yeah. Well, this coffee's been my breakfast, I guess.
Okay, nice seeing you again. Have a good one.
All right. We'll see ya.
Most intelligent conversation. Because they were having that discussion last night. Morning, Jake. Yeah, because I was apparently overhearing their conversation. Video turn on check of my hair. you.